Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We're taking calls on what should be done about not only the border, but about impeachment. Should we impeach Obama? He is declaring now that he's going to do some executive orders before the midterm elections. They think that's going to help them. As several callers have pointed out, if we have a GOP that doesn't have the backbone to do anything after scandal after scandal after scandal, then maybe we're going to have the GOP voters who aren't energized. Maybe they're not going to be energized if the GOP sets back and does nothing, no matter how outrageous, no matter how unconstitutional, no matter how tyrannical, dictatorial his actions are. And the question is, when we look at the border, what are we going to do about it? We just had a report from Joe Biggs, who's now down at the Arizona border. And, of course, the border all across the southern border is wide open and has been for a very long time. There's probably more fences up now than we've ever had before. We have the federal government going down and building fences, metal fences, spending $3 million per mile. And then they go back and they put a gate in it and lift it up about 5 feet so people can just walk right through. Of course, they put 3 strands of barbed wire across it. That's not any obstacle for anyone. That's what we have now. And we have massive immigration that we've never had before, even when we had fewer fences. This is a manufactured crisis that's going on now. This is not something that just happened by accident. There's both a pull in terms of our policies that have been put in place by Obama, again, by executive order. Our immigration policies, our DREAM Act, all these different things have been put in saying that we're going to give an expanded entitlement state to anyone who comes in under the age of 31. They'll be able to get all kinds of benefits in terms of educational benefits that even our citizens don't enjoy. We can't go to any state and get in-state tuition. And many of them, of course, are going to get free ride tuitions. That's just part of it. Of course, they're also going to be paid for in our taxes that we have for our local school taxes. This will implode the country. So what do we do about it? Why is this happening now? Well, it's because of our welfare policies, but it's also there really is violence in those countries. There really is economic hardship in those countries. And that is being driven, the violence and much of the economic hardship is being driven by American policies, by IMF policies, by banker policies, by our war on drugs and our prohibition policies that are down there. Now, they do have out-of-control violence there because of the drug cartels and the gangs. That is now moving north into our country. And if you look at the number of people that have been killed in Mexico, it's an absolute slaughter. Far more have been killed in the war on drugs in Mexico than in the Afghanistan war. Do we want to bring that violence into America? Well, Obama is saying essentially yes. So how do we respond to this? Do we militarize the border? Do we militarize the police? Do we make the same mistakes that we've made in light of 9/11 and the war on drugs? I don't think so. We need to step back and look at the policies that are causing the economic hardship there as well as here. The policies that are causing violence there as well as here. We need to stop those policies rather than double down and do another 9/11. Do another Patriot Act. That's what I'm concerned about seeing happen. Now, I don't want to see the border militarized. I don't want to see us put into a giant FEMA camp that stretches around the entire perimeter of the southern border. I don't want to see that happen. I want to see the policies addressed. I want to see drug wars, drug prohibition, SWAT teams, the militarization of the police. I want to see that brought down. I want to see some of the entitlement programs that we can no longer afford. We have a $17 trillion debt. How are we going to pay for all of these new dependents? Well, of course, that's just one aspect of it. Just before the break, we were getting ready to talk to Margaret in North Dakota. I think, Margaret, you were on hold, but couldn't hear us. Are you there now?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Hi, David. As far as impeachment, first of all, I don't think we'd have enough time right now anyway before the election.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. And now you can protect yourself from corrupt cops with the InfoWars dash cam. It's your car's black box device that records all that the driver sees and hears. And introducing the Block It Pocket. It renders your phone undetectable while protecting your private data and your health. Or take back your privacy and protect your personal information by getting your very own Detractor cell phone pouch. So get incredibly high-quality, freedom-based products and help fund the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.
We've been talking about whether or not Obama should be impeached. We've been talking about what should happen at the borders. Should we build more fences? Should we build different kinds of fences? Should we make them higher, deeper? Should we spend billions and billions of dollars essentially creating a massive jail for ourselves? Or should we create a police state, as we've made that mistake with the war on drugs? Should we destroy civil liberties even more than we have in the wake of 9/11? Should we militarize the police even more than we have in the wake of 9/11? Should we send the military down there? Along these lines, let's take a look at what just happened. Take a step back for a moment and take a look at what happened with the Second Amendment this weekend. We just had a federal court case in D.C. This is Palmer versus D.C. This is a case that's been winding through the courts for 5 years. And finally, the judge there has ruled in favor of the person who is suing to have his right to carry. This is an action. The lead attorney is Alan Gura of the Second Amendment Foundation. Congratulations to them. Thanks for fighting for that. And this is what the court decision said from Judge Frederick Scullin. He said, "There's no longer any basis on which this court can conclude that the District of Columbia's total ban on the public carrying of ready-to-use handguns outside of the home is constitutional under any level of scrutiny. Therefore, the court finds that the District of Columbia's complete ban on the carrying of handguns in the public is unconstitutional." That was a 19-page ruling, just came out. And, of course, that follows on the heels of the Supreme Court slapping down the District of Columbia back in 2008, Heller versus D.C. In that particular case, that was a fellow who was a police officer or security guard of some sort, Heller. He was not allowed to have a weapon when he was off duty even. They would not even allow a police officer who worked for the city to have a weapon off duty. So they were struck down. That law was struck down by the Supreme Court saying, no, he can have a gun. So they immediately said, all right, you can have a gun, but you have to keep it locked up in your home. You can't take it anywhere. Well, that's infringement. That's what is meant by the Second Amendment, saying that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you infringe it with all these different qualifications, you don't allow people to actually carry the gun so they can actually have it with them if they need to defend themselves. That's exactly what the Second Amendment was there to stop, was government doing that. Yet we still see, in this other article up on Infowars.com, Boston police say residents do not need to own shotguns and rifles. This is the head of the Boston Police Commissioner William Evans. He says, nobody in the city needs a shotgun. Nobody needs a rifle. Well, I guess maybe that includes the police. I don't know. We know better than that. We know that you do need to have weapons to defend yourself. And, of course, they will try to infringe on that right any way that they can. But I want to think about this. I want you to think about this case of two shootings, essentially in the same area, both of them up in Pennsylvania, both of them involving psychiatric patients going into a psychiatric ward or hospital and involved in a shooting. They're 2 years apart. Now, 2 years ago, this was a gunman in the Western Psychiatric Institute, and he went into this Pennsylvania place, and he fired several shots using two semi-automatic guns. He killed one man who was 25 years old, injured 7 others before police eventually arrived and shot him and killed him. Now, in the case that just happened in Pennsylvania, this is reported by ABC News, they say inside the furious close-range gun battle at a Pennsylvania hospital, in this particular case, you have another patient who comes in, pulls out a gun out of his waistband, and shoots a caseworker in the head without warning. She's killed. But then what happens is the doctor that he really wanted to kill, that he had come to shoot, that was a Dr. Silverman, he, according to this article, dove to the floor, pulled out a semi-automatic pistol out of his pocket, and had a furious close-range gun battle with this shooter, who police said fired at least 10 rounds. The doctor who was using a chair for protection aimed his gun at the shooter and fired until it was empty. The doctor was grazed in the head, wounded in the thumb while covering his face, but he was able to get out of the office unaware that he had struck Plotz, that is the shooter, 3 times. And then what happened was someone else bravely climbed through the window and wrestled him to the ground. But he shot him 3 times. He was still trying to reload, but at that point, I think he had been taken down a bit. But that's the situation as it stands. Now, of course, there have been reports that there's going to be disciplinary action possibly taken against this doctor who defended himself and defended others by shooting this guy who came in and shot the caseworker in the head immediately. The difference is, as we've seen over and over again, as the police chief in Detroit has pointed out over and over again, when something like this happens, you're on your own for a while. The police can't be everywhere. It takes them a while to get there. And so you see in the first case, 7 people were shot. In this case, 1 person was shot besides the shooter. That's the difference in having concealed carry. That's a practical argument for it. Of course, there are many other arguments for what the Second Amendment is really about. It's really about a deterrent on a tyrannical government. But we have other deterrents, and one of those is impeachment. And we were just talking to Margaret in North Dakota. You were weighing in, Margaret, as to whether or not you think that Obama should be impeached or not. And if so, what do you think he should be impeached for? Go ahead.
Well, for right now, I think we should hold off on that because we wouldn't be able to do it in time prior to the election anyway. And it looks like the Republicans are going to take the Senate and keep the House. You also have a situation where in the primaries, you have more libertarian candidates coming in. And all you need is maybe a handful more control of the Republicans, along with the citizens they know are more libertarian. And we have to control the conversation.
I think that, I don't know how long it takes to go through the impeachment thing. It doesn't necessarily have to take longer than the election. But I agree with the earlier callers that if we don't energize the opposition base, I don't know that the Republicans are going to have that much of a majority anyway. And even if they do win, what difference does it make if they won't stand for principle? Thank you, Margaret. Let's go to Chris in Indiana. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, David.
Hey, what's on your mind? What do you think we should do about impeachment?
First on the impeachment thing, I don't think it would do any good at all, even if Obama was impeached and kicked out of office. Vote, because if you're impeached, it doesn't matter. I mean, Clinton was impeached and the Senate was on his side, so he was just thrown out. Even if Obama was thrown out by the Senate, you'd have Joe Biden as president. I mean, what would that do? It would be worse.
Well, you know what? I think that it actually did make a difference. I think it moved government back somewhat when Nixon was impeached. I think that when Clinton got away with it, I think that kind of emboldened the lawlessness. And you could argue, I think maybe the best argument for not impeaching Obama is that if he gets away with it, he's going to be even bolder. But what do we do to stop him? I mean, he's going to rule by executive order. He's going to just grant amnesty to who knows how many millions of people. He's going to put them on the welfare roll. He's going to put them on the voting rolls. What do we do about that? What do we do about the other scandals and the criminal breaking of the law with the other scandals?
No, there's endless scandals, and it's all the scandals are just all rounding out to get a big goal for the New World Order. But I wanted to get to the border also. Ron Paul has said in many of the debates, I was watching that stuff, like I was obsessed with it when Ron Paul was in all these debates. He brought up in one of the debates, because they were talking about the border, he said repeatedly that we care more about the borders between Afghanistan and Pakistan than we do between the United States and Mexico.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.
David Knight, we're taking your calls on what's happening at the border. Are we going to have amnesty by fiat, by executive order by Obama? Should he be impeached? Does he want to be impeached? That's what Steve Stockman said when he went to the border. He said Obama is begging to be impeached, and it certainly looks that way. The Obama administration has openly said that they plan to do executive orders on amnesty, on blanket amnesty, before the midterm November elections. We've had Congressman Gutierrez, who was just speaking at La Raza, said that we should have amnesty for the illegals who are here so that we could punish those who oppose illegal immigration. He's saying that he thinks that we could get 3 to 5 million people given amnesty by executive order. Of course, that number, as callers have pointed out, is probably much higher. We don't have any real numbers to know who's going to be entitled to citizenship by fiat, by the executive order, because we haven't seen those. We haven't seen that defined yet. Now, of course, we also have Senator Pete Sessions saying we need to melt Congress's phone lines to stop Obama's planned executive amnesty. I guess the question is, are we going to see the GOP do anything, or are they going to just grandstand like we've seen Darrell Issa do with the IRS? I mean, that makes people very cynical about anything ever being done. I mean, if you can't send these people to jail, if you can't impeach them when they do the same things that Richard Nixon was impeached for, but far greater, to a far greater extent, to a far greater depth, and with an attitude. You didn't even see the IRS joining in Richard Nixon's wanting to use the IRS to go after his enemies list. The IRS commissioner theoretically put that enemies list in the safe, and that was part of the exhibits and the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Today, they go ahead and go after an entire political movement and then say they don't have their emails where they were talking about doing that. They all just conveniently disappeared. So we see this has gone far beyond whatever it was with Richard Nixon. This is not a situation like it was with Bill Clinton, where he was merely caught, and I say merely, it was enough to impeach Bill Clinton, but he was caught with just one thing that came after him, and that was lying under oath about an affair. Obama has many things that the Obama administration has lied about, many criminal activities, cover-ups, denying information to Congress, and this is just one of the things, the border, but it is a very large part of it. But the other question is, do we just allow the border to be open? Do we build a bigger fence, a deeper fence, a higher fence? We've got Joe Biggs down at the border, and he's been showing us pictures of what the fence actually looks like. We've seen that a fence that they spend $3 million per mile to build. They also put in gates, and they leave those gates wide open in case it rains. You can see the footprints of the people walking underneath the gates. That's what passes for border protection. Let's take a look at some more of Joe Biggs' reports.
All right, here we are about a mile up from where we just had a second ago. Now, what you can see here is a main traffic route right through here for the smugglers. What they do is they pull up a 15-pack van. Now, this is probably, 12 feet high? What they do is they bring it up, stand on top. They have an I-beam to step down on, drop down to this beam, and then come into the country, and they're free. They're home free. Look at this. Right over here, there's a little barbed wire area that's easy to get through. Everybody's done it with some small little pliers. You can just cut right through, and you're home free. Our government is wasting money building this fence, and all they're doing is giving them a spot to step and get over into the country. It's a beard. They're putting money, the Department of Homeland Security is saying, yeah, we have a fence. We have a fence. But yeah, look at it. I could climb over this. This is ridiculous. Where's the security at? Where is the secure border that they tell us is up, but I have not seen yet? Continue watching our videos, because we're going to keep giving you eye-opening, mind-blowing reports down here at the border. I'm Joe Biggs with Infowars.com.
Now, as Joe pointed out, it is a beard. It is just a facade that they put up in some areas so they can do photo ops with it. But what is really behind this? Why has this changed so much recently? Well, of course, it's our policies, pulling people in to give them entitlements, but it is also the war on drugs that is really creating the danger, I believe. It's not just economic collapse that we have to look forward to. It is a massive explosion of violence as these gangs come across the border, engage in prohibition. The prohibition racket, just like we saw in alcohol prohibition, you saw rival gangs shooting each other with Tommy guns in the streets. That ended after 13 years, and we now have the New York Times calling for a repeal of prohibition again. Now, one of the things they don't mention in here is that the first time we had prohibition, we had a government and a Congress and a president who had enough respect for the Constitution that they knew they had to pass a special constitutional amendment to give the government the power to prohibit a specific thing, like alcohol. They don't have the power to do that. They don't have the constitutional power to do that. But of course, here we are, about 100 years later, there is no respect for the rule of law or for the Constitution, either from those who are in Congress or the presidency of either party. And so we've had now for 40, 50 years, we've had a war on drugs. Actually, I think it was Nixon that started it in the 70s. And then, of course, we had Ronald Reagan double down with it. He actually went after the users, which is something that they never did under alcohol prohibition. And as Rand Paul pointed out when he talked to the NAACP, this is targeted more so on minorities. We have people who are non-violent offenders, people who have a certain amount of marijuana can go to jail for 55 years. They can get more jail time, mandatory minimums without parole, more jail time than somebody who's committed murder. That's the absurd situation that we have here, but it's not just in our country. It's also the root of the violence in these other countries. It's the root of MS-13 and the Zeta gangs, those gangs that our CIA created, along with the Iran-Contra scandals that happened there, as well as what we see going on in Afghanistan with the heroin trafficking that's there. Poppy production in Afghanistan went from 10% of the world's supply to 90% after the American military moved in there and started protecting those fields and helping those people. We saw what's happened in Central and South America. We know that the CIA and others were behind the increase in crack cocaine. They used it as part of their Iran-Contra scandal. So what do we do about this? Do we depend on the federales in America defending us, just like the federales in Mexico have not defended those people down there? We know that we're no safer now. We have SWAT teams. We have militarized police. We have a loss of due process. So many things have been destroyed in the war on drugs to no effect. To no effect. We still have as many people using these drugs. We could argue that they're using them even more so. If these are criminals in a black market that are giving these things to children and to other people, this is not like they're selling you a car and misadvertising the car where you could go back and sue them. That's why black markets are always so much more dangerous. That's why black markets always create violence. So I want to know what you think we can do to stop the root causes of this border collapse, rather than responding to it in a way like we did to 9/11, which is to destroy even more of our rights, to militarize the police even more, to create even more of a police state. We're going to take your calls right after the break. Stay with us.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield, true nascent iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine, from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.